We start off from the Appointments Committee, where Minister-Designate for Trade and Industry Alan Kyerematen Monday came under great pressure from members of Parliament's Appointments Committee to explain how the Akufo-Addo administration will roll out its flagship One District, One Factory campaign promise. The Minister-Designate, who was quizzed by the committee for well over 3 hours, sought to clarify how the new government will ensure its policy will be implemented. You will recall Mr. Kyerematen has come under criticism for collapsing the presidential special initiatives. Mr. Kyerematen explained the thematic areas that will drive the One District, One Factory policy.
First is improving the competitiveness of existing local industries. Clearly, there is value in starting new industries, but we want to look at existing companies, help them to become more competitive. And so that's the first element of our agenda for industrial transformation. And we are working towards being able to provide a stimulus package for existing industries, which will involve us undertaking a diagnostic study of these companies and identifying exactly what it will take for them to become more competitive. Because we believe that if they are able to enhance their competitiveness, they will be able to create more jobs and also enhance our revenue generation. The second is the One District, One Factory initiative. We recognize that even if, admittedly, it is useful to support existing companies, we recognize that the concentration of existing industries, either by chance or design, is in the major cities of Ghana. So the One District, One Factory initiative is designed to do a number of things. First, to create massive employment all over the country. And secondly, to add value to our natural resource base. Thirdly, to identify potential strategic export commodities, which then would help our export revenue generation. Fourthly, also to identify import substitution products that could also help us reduce our expenditure, foreign exchange expenditure.
Okay. Chairman, if you permitted me, since you are rolling out competitiveness of local industry, what will you be seeking to do and within what timelines?
Initially, we would undertake a diagnostic study. Let's take for granted we have 100 companies that we believe are potentially viable but are currently distressed. We, as I sit here now, will not be in a position to determine the specific support that they need to improve their competitiveness. So the starting point is for us to do an audit of these companies, identify exactly what they require to become competitive. And then we'll provide a comprehensive package of support to help them improve their competitiveness.
Honorable, we'll be relying on your competence and expertise. What will you roll out as a package to enhance competitiveness?
Mr. Chairman, even at the risk of sounding competitive, I'm suggesting that the only way we can come to a determination as to what they require to become competitive is to do a diagnostic study. Some of the companies may only need marketing support. Some may require an infusion of new technology. Some may require additional investment capital. So it is important that we do it on a case-by-case basis. But just to add, Mr. Chairman, that the important thing is for our private sector to appreciate and recognize that the government is committed to making sure that the private sector survives and leads the process of transformation.
Well, the former Trade and Industry Minister under the erstwhile Akufo administration also promised to initiate major trade interventions for the private sector by making capital easily accessible to industry players to create jobs.
First, if the reference is to our previous term of office in government. Is that your understanding, honorable member?
Both past and into the future, what will you do for the private sector of Ghana? You are free to share your previous, but we are more interested in going forward.
First is facilitating access to capital, particularly medium to long-term capital. We all recognize that it is not as if the banks in this country do not provide credit and financing, but we know it is the tenor of the credit that they provide which is a challenge for our companies. So our first focus will be on facilitating access to medium and long-term capital. It is in this regard that we've made a number of commitments. First is to refocus the operations of the National Investment Bank to provide medium to long-term credit. Secondly, we've proposed the establishment of an industrial development fund, which would literally do the same thing. And also, we've talked about reviving and recapitalizing existing financial intermediation that would also produce the same thing.
Thank you, Mr. Nominee. You've just mentioned capital for the private sector, where you have a government which overcrowds the private sector and a prohibitive interest rate regime. What will you do to improve that?
What we intend to do is to make sure that government limits its borrowing from the financial sector, particularly from the banks. Now, once you do that, the banks have literally no option but to increase the delivery of capital to support businesses. So
let's turn our attention on the Minister-Designate for the Local Government and Rural Development, Hajia Alima Mahama, whose vetting just ended. She says she did not breach any law when she signed a letter revoking the appointment of MMDCEs. Quoting sections of the Constitution, the nominee explained that the President exercised his prerogative by directing her to take that action. Listen.
If you look at 58.1, it says the executive authority, with your permission please, the executive authority of Ghana shall vest in the President and shall be exercised in accordance with the provision of this Constitution. Then it goes to 58.3, and it says, subject to the provisions of this Constitution, the functions conferred on the President by Clause 1 of this article may be exercised by him either directly or through officers subordinate to him. This is what the Constitution says. And the President, and again, as again you have alluded, the transitional provisions, you've referred to the Presidential Transition Act, the various provisions. It again refers, the first one that you read, 14.1, on the assumption of office, those persons specified in the schedule will cease to hold office. And it goes further to say that the functions, 14.2, the functions of office of a person who ceases to hold office under subsection 1 shall be performed by a person so appointed by the President for the period specified in writing by the President. In a letter dated 9th January, the President wrote to me, Alima Mahama, directing that I be his representative to take charge of affairs of the Ministry of Local Government and Rural Development.
Order.
And following on that, he directed that by virtue of the powers invested in him in Article 2433, he was revoking appointment of DCEs, and therefore I should go ahead and send out that letter, which I did.
And shortly we'll cross over to Parliament for more of the vetting proceedings. But now, government has dismissed the Director General of the Ghana Ports and Harbours Authority, Richard Anamu. Joy News is learning his dismissal was conveyed in a letter from the presidency. No specific reason was assigned for his forced exit. Last week, members of the Workers' Union accused Richard Anamu of overstaying in the position with a 2-year post-retirement contract expected to end in 2018. Our sources at the GPA say the letter was issued by the Secretary to the President, Nana Asante Beditu, Friday. The Director General was asked to vacate his post by end of working hours Monday. No reason was assigned on why he was being relieved of his post. Our sources tell us Mr. Anamu's tenure of office expired last year when he attained the retirement age of 60. But government offered him a 2-year contract which began in October last year and is due to end in 2018. So it's unclear why he has been asked to take his accumulated leave. Joy News has also been speaking to the Junior Staff Association, who have been jubilating over the news of Mr. Anamu's exit. Take a listen to Secretary of the Junior Staff Association, Keku Amuzwa.
Port expansion projects. Most of the port concession agreements signed by Mr. Anamu do not adequately protect the interests of GPHA and the state. For example, the new MPS agreement covers a period of 35 years, and within that period, GPHA gets next to nothing from containers that will be passing through the port. Plans are equally far advanced to give out the Takoradi Port Container Terminal for 45 years under similar conditions. IT investment in the port. From the year 2000 to date, GPHA has invested. He has invested about $150 million in diverse IT projects. Out of the aforementioned amount, about $20 million has been wasted in the purchase of software to replace the existing ones by Mr. David Boyson, the IT manager, yet those softwares do not function as expected. More than 100 staff and managers have gone through IT training in India, Dubai, and Egypt, but we have very little to show for the huge amount of money. Questionable promotion. From January 2012 to November 2016, over a period of 4 years, 378 staff were promoted to various levels and categories. Strangely, within 1 month after the declaration of the election results from 10th December to 15th of January, over 1,000 staff have been promoted to various levels and categories. Most of these promotions were politically motivated. Alarming rate of employment. For both Tama and Takoradi ports, 265 staff were added to the existing staff from January 2012 to 2016 November. However, the period just before and after the 2016 election witnessed massive employment of new staff, totaling about 800, including contract staff. Apart from the fact that this employment was not catered for in the 2016 budget, this has created a huge way bill that will undermine the future finances.
In other stories, a falling tree branch has caused the death of a 16-year-old student of the Ghana Secondary School, Ganas, in the Eastern Regional Capital, Kofredua. The first-year general art student, Edmund Amakon, was heading towards the boys' dormitory from prep when the incident occurred on Sunday evening. 7 other students who were with him sustained various degrees of injuries in the incident that happened after a downpour. Headmaster of the school, Very Reverend Abraham Osei, explained the majority of the students fled when they heard the sound of the breaking branch, but Edmund could not escape. Earlier on Monday, the family of the deceased student went to the school to hold meetings with the school authorities. The headmaster, Very Reverend Abraham Osei, spoke to Joy News.
I think now life has returned to normalcy. On Sunday, yesterday in the morning, we gathered all the students to stabilize them, brief them of what has happened, and then spoke to them. And then they went about their normal life this morning in fact assembly. The parents have now arrived. In fact, the mother arrived late last night. We found a place for her to lodge. And then the other members of the family have come. So we've taken them there. Of course, this is an accident, so the police were informed. Both the district commander of police, Fijasi, and then the regional police command, they all came in to the scene, the hospital, and they are all assisting in the investigation. I have started, trees that are old that we see, our agri department and those concerned, they do monitor. Sometimes they do pruning, and some of the branches need to be cut. We don't wait till that sort of thing happen. No, we've been doing it. And so there are some which are going, we cut them, and then they start replacing some of them. So it's a process we're going through, and this is most unfortunate that has happened. So it is not this that is giving clue for it. It is something we're doing, and it will continue. It will continue, and will continue.
Now, as we indicated, Parliament is still vetting Ministers-Designate, and Energy Minister-Designate Boakye Agyarko is before the Appointments Committee currently. Let's go live and listen in to what he's saying.
Able to return to the United States? Are you able to return to the United States?
Mr. Chairman, yes.
Mr. Chairman, on page 2 of the CV, but before then, just for clarity, your MBA in financial economics, are you certain about that? Because our checks with Pace University indicates that you can offer an MBA in financial management, but they are no longer offering an MBA in financial economics. I don't know if between the period 1989 to 1992, this was possible, financial economics.
Yes, between the time I graduated from Pace University, it was possible.
Page 2 of the CV, can you help us with the specific locations of the Global Network Management and the International Banking Group? You do not give us an address for these entities. Can we know where they are located and what exactly these entities do?
Mr. Chairman, if you look at from page 1, employment history, there's a bold Bank of New York, which flows into page 2. After Assistant Vice President, International Banking Group, the next employer, which is Management and Investment Consultants, then sets out the date. And after that, you have Ghana United Nations Students and Youth Association, GUNSA. So in laying out the CV, what I did was to lay out the 3 employers that I have worked with.
And may we know Management and Investment Consultants, where can we locate them?
Management and Investment Consultants was in Asylum Down, Accra.
Mr. Chairman, the nominee appears to have a 2-year gap in his CV between 1984 and 1986. Are you able to tell us what you were up to between 1984 and 1986?
Mr. Chairman, I was employed by Management and Investment Consultants in 1980 after my national service. In June 19, 1983, for those who will recall, there was a mutiny led by Lance Corporal Halidu Jiwa. I was picked up by the military and sent to the Air Force Station and put against a wall and shot. Almost lost my life. And through the intervention of Monsieur Levallois and my kind sisters who are seated behind me, I was able to leave Ghana first to France, through London to France, and then settled in the United States under very difficult circumstances, I must add. So for that period, I was close to being an invalid and didn't do any work. Management and investment consultants, even though I left in 1983, wrote to me officially saying that as at the end of 1984, I was no longer in the employ. So my employment with management and investment consultants ended in 1984. And for the next 2 years, I was going through a series of surgeries and recuperation.
My sympathies, rather touching story. Mr. Chairman, still on page 2 of the CV, I hope we will have the permission of the nominee to amend the National Coordinator, Ghana United Nations Students and Youth Association. In your earlier narrative, your brief profile that you gave, you indicated that that was your national service, but it is not indicated here as such. I hope we have your permission to make that amendment.
Yes, you may. I incidentally also have my national service certificate, which indicates where I did my national service.
Still on that page, leadership positions held. I'm quite curious, why do you have the presidential aspirant, New Patriotic Party? Do you consider that a leadership position?
Mr. Chairman, to be held in a certain position of political leadership in as high as aspiring to be its presidential candidate, to lead a national party, I regard as a leadership position.
Chairman, Honorable Sami, let me just interject. Since you are still on page 2, and with the indulgence of Chairman, membership of professional body, member of the American Economic. Is it economics you want, or we should know it as economic?
It's American Economics Association.
Economics or economic?
Economics.
So the S should come?
Yes.
Thank you. Then 1992-1997, chair of the New Patriotic Party North American branches. Do I assume that New Jersey, Philadelphia,
yes,
you were chairman for all of it?
No, all the branches had chairs. So New Jersey had a chair, New York had a chair, Chicago had a chair, and Los Angeles, and all of them had chairs.
So
I was the chair of all the chairs.
Chairs of chairs, not chairs of branches.
It's the equivalent if the jurisdiction were properly defined, then I would have been the national chairman of the North American.
Mr. Chairman, as we normally demand, we will like to have the period when you were inducted into these professional bodies, the American Economic Association and the member of the American Institute of Bankers. You may want to provide that later. You may also want to avert your attention to hobbies. Under hobbies, I believe you are trying to indicate listening to music, or is it listening to music? Please.
Listening.
So we'll have that corrected. Your CV does not indicate if you have been engaged economically, as in if you have been employed, gainfully employed, between 2010 and 2017. Over the last 10 years, your last employment appeared to have terminated in 2007. From that time to now, are you saying that you have not been employed whatsoever? Just you only have 2012 National Campaign Manager for NPP and 2016 Policy Advisor for the NPP. Between 2007 and 2017, this 10 years period, are you saying that you have not been engaged economically whatsoever?
Mr. Chairman, I have not. I chose, when I left the Bank of New York, I chose to devote myself 100% to politics. And I have not been employed otherwise.
Mr. Chairman, I'm done.
Any more questions on the CV? If not, we proceed to, very well. Suhini.
Substance. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Congratulations, Honorable Nominee. Even though it is a substantive matter, I'll take it from your CV. You have indicated that you worked with the Bank of New York. Now, the Bank of New York is a very, very controversial bank. I'm sure you're aware. And I'll tell you why before I ask the question. In 2005, Mr. Chairman, no, it is not an opinion. Mr. Chairman, in 2005, the bank was made to pay to federal officers $38 million for engaging in money laundering. And this led to the prosecution of one of its vice presidents. And this was as a result of, money laundered to the tune of about $17 billion through hundreds of ways. It ended up in the prosecution of 9 people. This was the time that, per your CV, you were working there. 2007, the same bank, Russia, filed a $22.5 billion lawsuit against the bank for money laundering, which was settled for $14 million. And this also happened at the time that you were working there, per your CV, if it is correct that indeed you worked there. Now, in 2011, the Justice Department in New York filed civil suits against the bank, alleging a decade-old foreign currency fraud. Now the question is, Mr. Chairman.
Sorry, I have tried earlier, but you go out on social media assaulting that. I'm trying to prevent you from asking questions. That's why I'm indulging you. But this is clearly breaching our Rules Order 67. Can you please go on to your question? What has the bank's prosecution of others, not the candidate, not the nominee here, got to do with us?
Thank you. I'll ask the question now. Thank you. I'll ask the question now. Now, can you, based on this record of the bank that you worked with, at the time that you worked, can you kindly...
I guess I may also need to address an aspect of the question that you asked. That, yes, you said he's claiming that he worked at a particular location. If indeed he worked there, that seriously is questioning the integrity of the person. And unless you have evidence to prove that he didn't work there, you cannot phrase the question that way. Clearly very offensive. Colleague, and I was not here in the morning. I don't know what the chairman is talking about, but I will plead with you that in formulating and framing your questions, please be very careful and address your mind to our rules of procedure. With respect to you.
I hope you take a cue, and please be advised. Go on.
Thank you. So the foundation still stands, and the question is, can you kindly briefly, tell us your work at the bank, how you were engaged, how you were discontinued, how you discontinued working with the bank, and perhaps later furnish us with the document that shows how you left the bank, so we can assure ourselves as a nation that you at no particular point in time played any role in these scandals that I have hinted at. Thank you.
Your question is overruled. If you want another question, please go on, but please dominate disregard and the part relating to order.
I can answer, Mr. Chairman.
Order.
Mr. Chairman.
Order. Please, if you want to answer the question relating to what role you did, answer.
Mr. Chairman.
Nominee, hold on. The majority leader wants to come in. Hold on.
Mr. Chairman, I'm very glad that the honorable member started by saying that the Bank of New York is a large organization. The Bank of New York operates in 125 countries. The money laundering issues of 2007 and 2005 and 2007 happened in London, a totally different jurisdiction from New York, where I was. A totally different jurisdiction from where I was. If the honorable member would care to investigate the structure of the holding company, Bank of New York, New York, Bank of New York, London, Bank of New York, Brussels, Bank of New York, Mexico, don't have lateral relationships. We all report to the holding company of the Bank of New York, New York, New York. It beats my imagination, therefore, that a case that happened outside my jurisdiction and a case for which was investigated and specific individuals held accountable and prosecuted without my name ever being associated with the business becomes an issue. The Ashantis have a proverb. To wit, because God abhors evil deeds, He gave each and every one of us a unique name. Mr. Chairman, the question has no linkage. The question of the criminal prosecutions has no linkage to New York and my employment. So I am rather lost on why it's an issue.
Honorable Nominee, your point is well made. Thank you very much. Now, Honorable Member, you will stay out of matters which are not relevant and which are not justifiable, accusations and so on. Please play by the rules, or else I'll go past you and call other people.
Mr. Chairman, I think that I have to make it clear that I am not happy with the way that I am treated on this committee. Mr. Chairman, I want it on record that I never impugned ill motives to the nominee. I simply referred to scandals and sought to find out how he left the bank, so we assure ourselves that he had no role in those scandals, because a vice president was held responsible and he also left as vice president. I never impugned ill motive, I never accused him, and I would like that to be on record that I am not happy about the way you have treated me on this committee.
Honorable Suhini, you're not ready to ask a question, I'll move on.
To my next question.
No, I've ruled you out. I'm asking another person too.
What kind of rudeness is this?
Honorable Cabo.
Congratulations, Honorable Boache,
Ejako, nominee of the president.
To be a member of parliament. I was elected by my constituents. I was elected.
Go ahead. We are waiting for you. Come.
Honorable nominee, I would like to congratulate you on your nomination. And we in the New Patriotic Party are very happy and confident that you will deliver in this portfolio. I'm sure you are very much aware of the issue regarding the erratic power supply in this country, popularly called dumsor, quote in quotes. I would like to find out what measures you are going to put in place to arrest and deal with this problem once and for all.
Mr. Chairman, the matter of dumsor has had significant consequences on this country, starting from 2012. The fact that we still talk about dumsor this day clearly suggests that the problem was never fully solved, and it lingers. To put it in a nutshell, we believe that we are moving from dumsor to a steady state of power supply to the ideal state of uninterrupted power delivery. The problem of dumsor, in our estimation, is not a technical problem. If you look across the spectrum of the energy sector, we have some of the best brains and technical people in our energy sector in Africa. The problem of dumsor has been principally one of money. The energy sector, we find now, is seriously cash-strapped, to the extent that we now live in a debt merry-go-round. If you look at the value chain for power delivery, the power generator, the major power generator, VRA, and the IPPs, independent power producers, buy their crude, they generate power, load it onto GridCo, GridCo sells it to ECG, and ECG must collect the monies and pay. ECG is not able to collect and pay GridCo. GridCo, therefore, is not able to pay the power producers. The power producers are therefore not able to pay for crude. And therefore, it limits their ability to generate power. As we stand now, roughly 40–45% of installed capacity is idle. It's idle because we cannot get the gas, the LCO, or the HFO to power these plants. In certain instances, we do not even have the money to do scheduled and regular maintenance, therefore threatening the plant in terms of warranty and insurance. So the problem has largely been one of how the money has been managed in the energy sector. We have come to the conclusion that in trying to end dumsor, we have to improve the financial management and structuring within the energy sector in order to do so, and that's what I commit to do.
Chairman, I may have a quick follow-up. In your earlier answer, you stated that dumsor referenced 2012. It is a historical fact that dumsor occurred in other periods of our country history. Will you walk us through that? Not necessarily 2012.
Mr. Chairman, my reference to 2012 is not to obfuscate the fact that there has been dumsor in this country. I am talking of this particular stretch of dumsor. However, recall that 1987, there was a problem with the hydrology of the Volta Basin. And therefore, we came into some shortage situations. 1993, there was a similar hiccup. 97, 98, we went through similar hiccups. 2006 into October 2006 into 2007, we had such similar problems. So I am not by any means saying that dumsor started in 2012. All I'm saying is that this particular stretch, as we experience it, started from 2012 and it's ongoing.
Chairman, I have to I'll yield to you. So are you assuming that between 1993, 2000, and 2007, those outages had nothing to do with money as a problem?
Money was not the majority problem. From 1987 all through 1993, there was a World Bank Harvard University study that told us about the hydrology of the Volta Basin and the periodicity with which we were going to experience these things. In as much as money may have been a problem, it was not the dominant factor in those occasions.
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. My second question has to do with government's program in respect of the expansion of rural electrification. If you look at the World Bank report, it states quite clearly that the high cost of electricity will compromise the rural electrification program, which means that communities that hitherto got electricity at flat rates and pay virtually nothing as a means of poverty reduction now will have to get automated, and prepaid cards have been put in many communities that were under the rural electrification program. It's making the cost of electricity quite expensive, indeed, out of the reach of the poor. What is your ministry going to do to ensure that those in the lifeline category, especially those within the NETCO catchment area, do not suffer as a result of high cost of electricity, but continue to enjoy the subsidies that come, especially for the poor? What is your ministry going to do about this situation?
Mr. Chairman, rural electrification is indeed a very important component of our national electrification strategy, because it lifts up the rural areas in terms of their social life and economic productivity. However, you are right, and I agree with you, that insofar as the tariff structures are changing and generation of electricity is becoming more expensive, it moves against the rural dweller. We are working out a situation where we are looking at major tariff reductions across board, particularly changing the structure for those in the lifeline, because normally they are under 50 kilowatt hours per month. Yet, because of the jumps in the tariff structure, they are equally hit. We have done some numbers, and we believe that once the president gets an accent, we will see some relief for them. Secondly, if you look at the spatial distribution of our population, particularly the rural areas, dropping lines, and the engineers will tell you best, dropping the lines from 161 kV down to 33 and to supply them tends to be a little bit more expensive. We have to find alternate sources of power for the rural communities, particularly they just wanted to light up and do non-industrial work. Distributed renewable power becomes an option. Off-grid solutions also become an option, and these will be aggressively pursued once I step in and see how the combination of these two sources can be of benefit to our rural populations.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. My last question has to do with the issue of solar energy. For those of us who come from deprived communities like the three northern regions, the abundance of sunshine must be taken advantage of so that we can reduce the burden on the national grid. What initiatives, what policies, what incentives are you going to put in place to make it possible for importers and businesses that want to bring in solar machines like is done in Burkina Faso, and rural communities are getting electricity as a result of solar? We have it in abundance, and so we want to find out what initiatives or incentives are you going to put in place in your ministry to make this possible and bring down the cost of importation in respect of solar?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Indeed, solar power, we have a comparative advantage in solar power because of location. Luckily, the technology for solar energy generation is improving and in the process lowering the cost of solar power, either in the utility scale or distributed solar power. It is our intention, as indicated in our manifesto, that we will aggressively move towards distributed solar energy or use of solar energy for government facilities and buildings. That takes off a pressure from the national grid, and secondly, it takes the pressure off government budget. From the figures I've seen as recently as last week, every single month, government increases its debt to Electricity Corporation by 66 million cedis. That is money it can't pay. But if we had distributed solar power, use of solar power, I believe that would come down significantly, or government would end up with no bills. We have, therefore, to provide the incentives, the necessary tax incentives, to make sure that the new technology, which is the way of the future, becomes affordable and becomes lucrative for people to invest in. The advantages of solar are immense. You don't have fuel costs, and you don't have LC costs, letters of credit costs associated with trying to bring in LCOs or HFOs. So indeed, it's very beneficial. And I believe that once we give the necessary tax incentives, the payoff, either in direct investment benefits, direct economic benefits, or a social cost-benefit accounting system, will prove very beneficial to the national economy and to individuals. So yes, the tax incentives are necessary. There are fiscal regimes that we have to encourage people with. And as a long shot, something I've thought about is to make sure that those going into renewables are not treated in the same category as those who are in hydro and thermal. Otherwise, the pricing becomes a deterrent to solar power producers and therefore becomes a disincentive to invest. The example is this. It costs about 3 to 4 cents a kilowatt hour to produce power by hydro. For thermal, it's all over the place. But on the average, it costs between 15 to 20 cents to do so renewable. It's simply because the technology is new and they haven't hit economies of scale yet. We have to find a way, either through our social cost-benefit analysis, to create a numeraire that will say if you produce power through hydro at 4 cents, it is equivalent to producing renewables at, say, 15 cents. That will help.
I have a follow-up, Chairman, if you permit me. In the nominee's answer to the Honorable Kabo's question, you indicated that 66 million is incurred to ECG, and you intend to stop this hemorrhaging. You also indicated major tariff reduction for lifeline consumers. When do you think you will commence action on this? And by what intervention?
And by
what intervention? What will you do so that ECG doesn't incur 66 million every month? When will you take a decision on major tariff reduction for lifeline consumers? In your opening remarks, you stated that.
In my opening remarks, I said government piles up a debt of 66 million a month. If we moved to distributed solar power for those facilities that are incurring these costs, then it would mean that sooner than later, those costs would not exist.
Chairman, I'm just asking, what does your sooner mean? What does your later mean? As for Ghanaians, we want to know when you are able to relieve us and relieve the state of that burden and relieve life consumers of that burden.
We are now assuming office. Some studies, I have seen some preliminary studies even in these very nascent stages. So I am confident that it will be done. Secondly, you ask about major tariff reductions. We indeed have worked out the numbers, not just for Lifeline, but across the entire spectrum of consumers. We intend to get the President's accent on the proposals, and I'm sure that...
Honorable nominee, and the assent is for reduction in tariffs?
Yes.
Thank you.
The reduction in tariffs through the remove first.
It's okay, you're giving us enough information. Honorable Eric Opoku, please.
Nominee did not finish with the answer. I'll just do a short follow-up. As my first question, are tariffs higher than rents in this country? And how do you intend to reduce tariffs immediately, as promised in your manifesto? You use the word immediate. Page 40B, reduce taxes on electricity tariffs to provide immediate relief.
Mr. Chairman?
No, sorry, you have just provided that answer. Please ask another question. He just said they have done the numbers and the next budget. That's what the answer to Honorable. Sorry? That immediate relief. He has provided the answers to when it will be done.
Eric Opoku, he assured in an answer to my question that subject to assent to the President, which he is waiting, based on some numbers he has done, we should expect tariff reductions for our record. He said so.
Now my next question. Honorable nominee, what will be your position on nuclear power if you are given the opportunity to serve in the capacity of Minister of Energy?
Mr. Chairman, indeed, just last week, there was a major conference on nuclear power in Ghana at Kwabenya. So there is a roadmap that we are traveling in order to secure for ourselves the magic of nuclear. They have laid out a roadmap for us that will see us beginning construction in 10 years hence. There are 19 benchmarks we have to measure ourselves against, and each benchmark will be approved by the International Atomic Agency in Vienna. It is our intention to move steadily along those 19 steps that will pre-qualify us. So it is not an immediate option. We will live with their regime, but we will do our very best to comply with the 19 steps and make sure that we qualify.
Chairman, sorry once again to the honorable nominee. So of these 19 steps, which of them are you able to do within the next 4 years or 2 years?
Mr. Chairman, that will not be, it does not lie in the bosom of the government to decide how many you can do within 3-4 years. It lies entirely in the bosom of the International Atomic Agency to satisfy themselves that, yes, indeed, Ghana has been able to meet its benchmarks.
So how will you help Ghana to meet the benchmarks within this period?
The help we can give is to make sure that Atomic Energy Commission is properly funded. Atomic Energy Commission is well staffed, that they benefit from the research that goes on globally, and that they participate in the community of atomic energy agencies and experts to leverage whatever advantages they can from these agencies.
Honorable nominee, my last question. What is the cheapest thermal generating plant in our country today in terms of tariff?
In terms of tariff, thermal, the cheapest I have seen, or the cheapest I have seen, are the proposals of Early Power and Amandi. That comes in at 10.12 or 10.14 cents a kilowatt hour. The beauty of those rates are that they carry their own fuel risk, which means a huge working capital on their own books of records rather than being a liability to the government. Those are the cheapest.
Honorable Adab, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Let me join my colleagues in congratulating the Minister nominee for Energy and to wish him well. I've been on the seat and I know how it is. We're here to support. I have three very simple questions. The first one, if you refer to page 42 of the MPP manifesto, we talk about renewable energy development. Very good ideas. You've explained them, and I'm glad that some of my colleagues support those ideas as well. Ghana has made significant strides in that area, from pilot projects to the current 2 megawatts plant actually existing in my village, Pungu Navrongo. Would you consider strengthening this effort by pulling out the renewable energy outfit into an independent agency to dedicate its efforts to seeking renewable energy sources for us? We always talk about solar. We've got wind, we've got tidal, a number of other sources such as waste to energy. would you consider an independent agency or authority or renewable to stand on its own? An agency that you can mandate, give support to go out aggressively and promote this effort. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Progressively renewable energy is going to be a major part in our energy mix. Currently, I learned from the engineers that given the nature of our national grid, the maximum amount of renewable power we can take on a daily basis is 250 megawatts. And most of the injection points that you load your renewables can only take up to about 20 megawatts at any given time. That in itself, to some extent, given the current state of the art or our technology, imposes a limitation that I am also assured is being worked on. On your question of the institutional alignment or realignment, I believe that the renewable energy section will benefit more if it stayed within the energy sector or the ministry, in the sense that it can now leverage the engineering knowledge from the other sectors of the ministry. What may be required is to give it more importance and attention in terms of resource allocation and research and engineering. Indeed, there are many, many projects that are coming to our attention with respect to renewables, and they are encouraging. What I think we ought to do from a policy perspective is to remove the framework that forces renewables to be compared directly to, say, hydro and thermals in terms of their qualifications and their pricing. Right now, if I want to do a jet rover plant, I have to literally do the same PCOA as another thermal. And the price incentives are not there to make me want to do that. Those are the policy reforms that we ought to be looking at in order to strengthen the base of renewables and make it attractive.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. My second question. Page 41, again, of our manifesto, states clearly how we intend to restructure the power sector by bringing the hydro generation together and then separating thermal. But to me, that's the higher level. Can we deepen this further by re-examining the utilities, trying to separate the non-core activities from the core mandate of the utilities? The history has shown us that what came up by way of VRA or any of the other utilities will say that we had to append to the core business of those utilities other ancillary functions that are not really core. And if you go to other jurisdictions, you'll find that some of those things don't revolve around power generation functions. Would we consider, or would you consider, deepening the restructuring by re-examining those outfits and trying to perhaps segregate the non-core functions from the core functions, and through that effort, maybe reduce the cost of generation and thereby reduce the cost of tariffs? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We indeed made the promise to put hydros together and the thermal markets together. We stand by that commitment.
Chairman, just a follow-up. What does that mean to put hydros together? Is Bui plus Akosombo, or what do you mean? The Ghanaian public.
Bui Akosombo form.
Put the hydros together. Can you elaborate? Thank you.
By putting hydros together means that all that we still have hydro sites that have not been developed. We have
such as
Juale on the Uti, Polgu. We have the
region.
Pardon me?
Yeah, Polgu in the upper.
Yes, we have the Western Rivers, Bia and Cobra and Pra.
But these are underdeveloped. So what will you be seeking to do? For as far as we are concerned, we know hydro in Akosombo. That's it. So are you seeking that are you seeking that you will develop new hydro sites? When do we expect you to begin this?
We will put all the hydro resources under one entity. And it is for them to determine the rhythm of development as they progress. Because they have the engineering expertise. For example, Juale has been talked of for a very long time, entirely feasible to deliver 84 megawatts. We are now solving a problem with the Republic of Togo because the flooding happens more on the Togolese side than on the Ghanaian side. So we want to put all our hydro potential under one body.
Just because the meeting of record, is a flooding from Burkina or from Togo?
No. When you dam the Juale,
yes.
Of course, the dam that forms behind, the reservoir that forms behind the dam floods. Just as when we built Akosombo, Krobos lost practically all their lands. The flooding will be predominant in Republic of Togo, in the Afajato Gorge, more than on the Ghanaian side, Utidamanko side. So now you have to negotiate the Togolese in all these protocols. But the point is that we need to put all the hydro potentials under one body for management and development. We also admit that given the nature of the hydrology in the Volta Basin, we need to give the resultant body called a VRA an opportunity to complement their power generation in the times when the reservoir is low. Why we choose to do this is the simple fact that hydro...
Chairman, I'm sorry, I appreciate this answer, but just for you to elucidate further, as far as the Ghanaian people are concerned, you today have 3 major hydro sites. When do you intend to commence work on Juale and Palago?
Mr. Chairman, that will depend on the feasibilities that are currently ongoing and the evaluation of the various technologies that are currently ongoing. For example, we know that we no longer need to dam the Pra, but that we can have immersion turbines. We have to evaluate that technology. And as we speak, there are tests going on. So I will not prejudge the matter by simply giving dates, but wait on the engineers and the developers to give us timelines as to how these things are going to be done. To improve the efficiency in the energy sector, it is important that we strip most of these entities of their non-core business. So you have a power generator that is suddenly a real estate developer. No expertise or competence compared to hydro generation.
Chairman, once again, I'm coming back on a follow-up. Just indicate to this committee what aspects of VRA's non-core business will you diversify and get them out of it? What aspects of ECG non-core business will you get them out?
Catering, for example. Hotels, catering, property development.
Which of them is doing property development apart from the Volta Hotel in Akuzuma? You know,
VRA is doing property development along Patrice Lumumba Road.
Honorable nominee, I think you've given enough information on this matter. So if you ended there, please ask your last question.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Minister nominee. My last question. Again, NPP manifesto, page 37. It's stated in there a total of about 1,440 megawatts brought in when NPP administration was in power, from Dam all the way through to the Osono plant. Mr. Chairman, I'm picking only one of those plants, the Pong thermal power plant, which was acquired in 2008, delivered fully. But the implementation was stopped from 2009 January for about 3 to 4 years. The cost of this plant was $160 million total, from turbines, acquisition, to EPC contracts. That doesn't compare favorably with the likes of Emery and Kappa, who are upwards of $500 million, as against $160 million. Would you consider reviewing these agreements and possibly abrogating them? And if you do abrogate them, how do we meet the gap? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It is thank you, Mr. Chairman. It is prudent business, commercial, and managerial practice to periodically review whatever contracts you have on your books. So as is to be expected, we will periodically review contracts. We acquired the aforementioned power plants under an emergency situation. Mr. Chairman, it's a little difficult defining an emergency as lasting a 20-year period. Car Power and Ameri were contracted for a period of 20 years each. Ideally, one would expect that if you are in an emergency situation, then there are two things you consider. How quickly the relief can be delivered, and how effective is that relief in terms of pricing. All the studies I've seen indicate to me that a 7-year contractual obligation would have sufficed. That would have allowed the amortization of the capital investment of those two plants. If you're looking at 20-year contract, then you might as well make it part of your national infrastructure, in which case it allows you to amortize the capex or the capacity charge over a 20-year life instead of a 5-year or 7-year life. That would have brought the prices down and made it a much, much cheaper option. As it is, we will go through review of all the power plants the emergency power plants that we've acquired, and the 48 power purchasing agreements That puts us at 8,000 megawatts when we are actually looking at 4,000 to 4,500 megawatt need. So these reviews will be done without prejudice. And the national interest will dictate what we do therefrom.
Agree to yes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, my first question will flow from the review of existing matters. There is a matter which certainly will engage your attention if this committee gives you the nod. And it is quite an urgent matter, and it has to do with the Ghana Compact 2, the Ghana Power Compact. It will appear that ECG workers are opposed to the private participation, which is a key component of this compact. What is the MPP government's position on Compact 2, and what should we expect in terms of how you proceed with the ongoing negotiation with the Americans, considering that there is a new government in place at the White House, and this time we need to be quite careful because, as we have heard President Trump say at his inauguration, is America first, and he may not want to continue to give us the funds, the support, if as a country we do not agree on a position quickly and move this matter forward. So what is your position on Compact 2 as we speak?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. If you can indulge me to reverse the answer, the order of answering. Having lived in America for 25 years, I don't think we should be scared of the rise of a Donald Trump. A Compact 2 was negotiated as an act of Congress, and he has no powers to nullify an act of Congress because it is America first. Will not work. Now to your fundamental question. All the ECG staff I've engaged admit that ECG has a problem, that it cannot be business as usual, but they disagree with the methods by which we are trying to solve the problem that we all see. From a philosophical standpoint, I have a problem with equity and fairness in treatment. The question I have posed is, ECG is in the kind of mess it is now largely because of unpaid bills. They have their managerial problems, they concede that. But if a company such as ECG is owed 800 million Ghana cedis by its own government, its own shareholder, I don't see what kind of business can survive under those circumstances. And the question, therefore, is, are we going to dislodge these disabilities that are plaguing and hobbling ECG off the books of records and allow the concessionaire to have a clean slate? If so, then do it for ECG. That is equity and fairness. If not, then my sense of mergers and acquisitions is that whatever you see is what you get. Let the concessionaire come in with all and take all the debts, assets, and liabilities and move on and see if they will outperform ECG. Remember that in the history of ECG, we've had two instances of such an intervention. The first was the Irish, and the second was with the French. They both abandoned and left. We will also recall that the best years of ECG was when Kalechi was managing director. They actually made profits and paid dividends. Why? Because the government stayed away from Kalechi and gave him a strong board to operate. Put all of it together. My and the party's position, apart from the philosophical angle of equity and fairness.
Chairman, I may have to come in to support the...
Let him finish this one. Now. Please complete your answer, then the ranking member will come in.
Apart from the philosophical issues of equity and fairness, I believe that any socio-economic project such as this is, which starts off with a lot of tension, anxiety, and anger, does not end well in its implementation. At this early age of RFP and procurement, we are having problems, even with delays. A lot of key milestones have been missed. So therefore, our position is, yes, there's a compact. Let us take on board all the issues that have been raised both by ECG workers, civil society, and others. And let us see if we can find common grounds to reduce the tensions, remove some of the misconceptions and so on, so the project can move forward. That is the position we take.
Chairman, listening to the nominee, are you suggesting that a concessionaire which accepts to take ECG with its assets and liabilities, you will support an outright sale to that concessionaire? Is that what you are suggesting?
Mr. Chairman, a concession is not a sale.
So once the concessionaire
if you read the compact very carefully, it is explicitly clear that the assets remain with government, but there is a lease on the assets. So the concessionaire comes in O&M to use the assets of government. The asset never leaves the books of records of government, so it's not a sale.
So having read the compact, you are convinced that it was not a sale of ECG, the MCE compact that government signed?
Absolutely clear. It's not a sale. It is ECG. A grant of concession for a period.
Thank you.
So, Chairman, my second question will be from page 45 of the NPP manifesto. Under Petroleum Downstream, item number C, you pledge to expand the Tema Oil Refinery tour and ensure BOST reverts to its core mandate of protecting our strategic petroleum reserves. I am seeking some clarification on what specifically you mean by getting BOST to revert to its core mandate, seeing that in recent times TOR and BOST workers have been in the press praising their chief executive and saying that they are really impressed with the reforms that have gone on there, and their balance sheets, we are told, are looking very good and all of that. But I will grant you this statement in your manifesto and seek further clarification. What exactly do you mean by BOST reverting to its core mandate, and what should the Ghanaian people expect under your stewardship if given the nod, so far as this specific promise is concerned?
Mr. Chairman, the 2016 September financials of BOST tells a completely different picture of losses. The audited statement tells a completely different picture of losses, some in the instance of $38 million and so on and so forth. When we talk of reverting BOST to its focus on its core mandate, recall that there were certain circumstances that led to BOST BDC issues where BOST had to step in and do certain things. We believe that if you structure the industry properly, and if you send the right price signals, and if you have a strong MPA in an enforcement regime, deterrence, and sanctions, you will have an environment that is sanitized. BOST originally has to make sure that Ghana has at least 6 weeks of reserves to cushion any disruptions in the market. Lately, we had BOST doing a lot of trading, cargo brought in to BOST, BOST to Tor, Tor to go to Goil, and it flows back. Those arrangements, I dare say, were murky. We want BOST to focus on its mandate and make sure that that is fulfilled. Of course, the nature of the product will mean that every 90 days they have to recycle. That in itself lends itself to some trading activities, but it shouldn't be the core of its activities.
Mr. Chairman, my third question, since if I do a follow-up, you will say that I have exhausted my questions. My third question has to do with electricity coverage. I'm very happy to belong to a political tradition that has the most impressive record of extending electricity to some of the remotest parts of Ghana. We were the first to send electricity to northern Ghana, to the Afram Plains. As we speak, electricity coverage, President Mahama brought it to 76%, which is second from under 55%, which is second to Mr. Chairman. Cabo is disturbing me. Honorable Cabo, can you allow me to ask my question? Which is second in the whole of Africa, only to South Africa. Can we have a commitment from you that you will continue with a vigorous expansion of electricity coverage? Because I still have a few communities in my constituency that are looking forward to electricity coverage. Though over the last 4 years, 160 communities in my constituency have benefited, but that has brought it to about 85% coverage. I will love 100%. So, honorable nominee, what commitment do you make to expansion in electricity coverage in our country?
Mr. Chair, for the avoidance of that before, did you say that in your community alone, your constituency, 160 communities were listed? Yours alone. I just wanted to, for the emphasis.
You know, I'm a very hard-working MP.
Mr. Chair, on the lighter note, I now understand why some didn't get any.
No, everybody got to 70%, 76%.
Mr. Chairman, let me assure the honorable member that we are committed to the aggressive expansion of electricity coverage, and beyond that, we are committed to making sure that power actually flows along those lines, not the statistics that we have this coverage, but power actually flows.
No, we'll come to the majority first. Honorable Kujo.
Thank you, Chairman, for the opportunity to ask my questions.
When you were answering one of the questions put to you, you talked about Ghana is caught up in debt merry-go-round.
Yes.
And so far as the energy sector is concerned. Looking at your background, Vice President, Bank of New York, and in charge of asset securitization in your global network, I want to believe you have the skill set under your sleeves to propose a solution to how we can bundle this debt and solve the problem as it is. Should we have that expectation?
Mr. Chairman, yes, you must have that expectation. The problem, as I said, in the energy sector is simply debt, and debt, and it's a merry-go-round. Currently, the debt stands, netted debt stands at about $3.3 billion US, about 8.7 billion Ghana cedis. We have started tinkering at the margins by trying to restructure 400 million of it. At this pace, that will not take us anywhere. Unfortunately, we do not have the tax space to tax our citizens to pay that debt. And the banks do not have credit space to do new rounds of lending to refi the old debt in the system. There are 8 banks that are above the prudent single obligor line of about 30-35%. Some of the banks are over their single obligor line by as much as 2,000%. Technically, those 8 banks should be in receivership. I don't believe, from my banking experience, that the approach we have now can quickly resolve the problem, and it must be quickly resolved. If I may offer my own independent assessment, we ought to go the route of non-recourse financing. Take it off the balance books of both actors in the industry and banks inside the country, either through a non-recourse or fully non-recourse or limited non-recourse with a private placement, or on the market as we do with Eurobonds over a tenure of 10 to 15 years, and dedicate a stream of income to service that debt over that maturity period. I believe that will be better than the tinkering at the margins. We don't have a balance sheet to absorb it. That is why I believe that a non-recourse lending or non-recourse financing would be a better option. That's my own personal opinion.
Chairman, I may have to come in with a follow-up because I worked with the transition team, and I probably recall that it was recommended that the energy sector, because of the huge outstanding issues, be given some attention. I'm assuming that you are aware that part of the debt of the BDC, which is threatening the very financial institutions you are referring to, is now referred to as a legacy debt. Legacy debt because you are talking of forex losses and subsidies that government took responsibility to address. And therefore, the energy sector levies was used to start the process of restructuring the debt. Is that the case or not?
Mr. Chairman, what the honorable member says is correct, but it's a drop in the mighty ocean. The BDC debt, as it stands now, is $156 million US. We are talking of a debt of $3.3 billion. If you look at the work that was done, the crude bill outstanding to Sahara alone is over $800 million. So we are in a situation where I say we are tinkering at the margins of the problem and pussyfooting around it. We need to get bold and say that, look, trying to do 400 million here, 156 million here ain't gonna cut it. So therefore, it is important to make sure that we go the route of limited or full non-recourse fine and take the entire 3.4 billion off the books of records of either the sector players or the banks in a private placement or on the market over a 10 to 15-year tenor. To me, professionally, that would be our best option.
Chairman, just related to it, if you take, for instance, a 3.3 billion to the market, even borrowing for purpose of a Eurobond, because of the exposure of your risk and the standing of your fiscal deficit, that informs you getting a Eurobond at 2 billion at 10% or probably more. When will you initiate this process to set off postponing the payment of this debt in the period you are talking about?
Mr. Chairman, I beg to differ with Honorable Member. The analysis he's given is basically suited to open-ended transactions. If you have dedicated receivables and you securitize those receivables to service the debt, you are in a completely different position. That is why Cocoa Board can go to market and get 1.2 over LIBOR. And Ghana, which owns Cocoa Board, goes to market and get 10.75. A private placement is it's a different animal in terms of refinancing than the open market. I will suggest that if we structure it right and dedicate and securitize receivables to meet that obligation, we will be in a better place.
Honorable Chairman, I go to my second question. Honorable nominee, my second question relates to the relocation of the head office of GNPC to Takoradi. At least my constituency share boundary with Takoradi constituency, and most of the workers will reside in my constituency, so it's a welcome thing. But there have been argument on why that is the motive for the relocation. Somebody would ask, what about if we find oil in Volta region or we find oil in Northern region? What happens? Do we relocate the head office? What would you say? What would you say? Is the reason for the relocation of the head office to Takoradi?
Mr. Chairman, I'm very happy that the honourable member opened his in principle with the conditional clause if. Mr. Chairman, it therefore makes it entirely hypothetical. We will cross that bridge when we get there.
Thank you very much. Honorable Halu.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I have only one question, and that is about the use of fossil fuel in our energy mix. I would like to ask the nominee, what is his take on the use of coal for power generation? I mean, the setting up of coal-fired plants to help us solve this immediate power crisis that we face.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Unfortunately, coal is also a fossil fuel. So we are running away from one form of fossil fuel to another form of fossil fuel. Coal, in the scheme of things, is the dirtiest of fuels. They will tell you that they now have the super systems. Nonetheless, coal emits more the carbon dioxide than gas or LCO. The only advantage of coal, as I see it, is that it brings you in terms of generation cost, it brings you in the neighborhood of 6 to 7 cents a kilowatt hour. But coal is not superior to LCO. My thing is, we have gas. Let us use what we have first before we get into the other imports.
Follow up, please, because of the answer. I'm aware that Asogli plants and VRA intend to embark on setting up plants, in which they will use coal. So what would you do with such an intervention?
Well, Mr. Chairman, the Shenzhen Power and Asogli intend to set up a coal plant in the Gomoa area. Initially, they intended doing 700 megawatts, and then they are thinking of 1,000 megawatts. What we have to do is to make sure that we impose the most stringent EPA conditions on that power generation. Otherwise, we will be causing more harm than good environmentally. Look, China is demobilizing most of its coal plants. Go to the Hunan province, go to Guangdong, they are decommissioning plants. So one has to be a little bit of a skeptic to say, then why are you coming here? If you are decommissioning yours, why are you coming here? If need be, we ought to make sure that we have such EPA standards that protect our environment and our children. That way, we can proceed and see what happens.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Congratulations, Honorable Wajaku. The cost of electricity is becoming very high. I want to ask, have you taken the trouble to check on illegal connections? And as to whether, after putting some measures to eliminate illegal connections, there will be the need for us to cut down on the cost of the price of electricity in the country, because I don't understand why I should be paying for somebody's illegal connection. Do you have any intention of solving that problem?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You've hit on a raw nerve in the power distribution sector. 30% of all power given to ECG is lost, either through technical losses or commercial losses. Commercial losses is a nice way of saying theft. Every percentage point represents 60 million cedis. So 60 times 30% is the amount of power we are losing when it gets into the ECG basket. There are a number of things we can do. One is initiate what the ECG people themselves have been advocating, district boundary metering. ECG is organized by districts. They do not meter how much power goes into the district, but they meter how much I sell. So if I'm a district manager, I don't know how much power I was given. I only know how much I sold. Therein lies a lot of the losses. So we have to go and do district boundary metering so that every district will operate as a special business unit doing profit and loss accounting. I bought this and I sold this. Here are my profits, here are my losses.
Something else.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, looking at the generation capacity that we have as a country and the promise given by MPP during the campaign, can the Honorable nominee assure us that under his watch we will not experience dumsor again in this country?
Mr. Chairman, as I indicated earlier, dumsor is not a function of capacity, installed capacity. Dumsor is a function of, one, your ability to procure sufficient feed or crude or gas to power the plants. That's one. Dumsor can also be a situation where power plants, particularly the thermal plants, because of money, are not undergoing their regular cycle of maintenance. So they go past their firing hours, reduced efficiency, and hence the plants begin to have problems. If you look at a lot of the plants, the thermal plants in the Aboase enclave, they are having that kind of a problem. So dumsor is not simply that you have installed capacity and therefore you will not have outages. The second aspect, so this is the scheduled aspect of outages. Then there's an unscheduled aspect of outages. One of the problems this country has imposed on itself is the haphazard location of thermal plants with respect to the structural integrity of the national grid. So, for example, all the load is currently in the east, and the western system is weak. A proper allocation of the plants would have put 2-3 more plants in the western to balance the load. Right now, the imminent problem we face is that if one of the plants shut down for whatever reason, the national grid immediately becomes unstable and can start triggering outages. So it is not just you have capacity, but one, planning, two, having money to fuel your plants, and having money to do scheduled and regular maintenance. But we commit to this nation that we will move into steady power very, very quickly, and then ultimately get into uninterrupted power.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, in a press conference held by the nominee, in Accra on Monday, 19th September 2016, the nominee said, and I quote, "Mahama puts corruption first." Why did you make this statement? And what are the justification for this assertion?
You're even giving him a chance.
Mr. Chairman, an American president once said, "The buck stops here." We are in a situation where there has been very questionable procurement practices in the energy sector. All the studies that we have done under the NDC administration clearly indicates that we needed only one FSRU. The National Gas Aggregator, GNPC, has been in discussions with Quantum Power for 1.5 years, organizing the deployment of an FSRU.
Okay. Honorable Member, what is FSRU?
FSRU stands for Floating Storage Regasification Unit. What happens is, Mr. Chairman, what happens is to transport gas is a risky business. So you compress the gas and bring it to a certain temperature where for the same amount of storage, you can store 600 times of the gas. When you bring it in, it's in liquid. You have to turn it back into gas, and that is called regasification. All the studies said FSRUs, one, put it in the Eastern Enclave to support the gas deficit. Before anybody could say jack, there was a second FSRU brought to Parliament, Sahara. When the indications and the study was that do only one, brought to Parliament and passed at exorbitant price. The commodity price blended was $7.8 per million MBTUs. When, if you looked at Houston, it was about 5. Then the processing cost was 3.3 and later hand changed to 2.2. When regasification is sometimes below $1. Now you ask yourself, if regasification all around is $1, why am I paying $2.20 and why is it being passed? To add insult to injury, Mr. Chairman, just as we were flaying our arms over the second SFRU, a third one comes in. So now we have 3 FSRUs where we need one. And the president on July 16, 2016 says, okay, World Bank is now breathing on my neck. Let us form a committee to decide what to do. That was needless hassle. And we can also look at the procurement of car power, the fuel for car power. When GNPC was going through the tendering process, which was stopped, the indicative price for HFO for car power was $2 million for a month's supply. After the tendering process was stopped to sole sourcing, it is now $7 million for the same procurement. And you ask, so what happened? I can go on and on and on with specific instances. And as far as I'm concerned, as far as I read into it, It didn't sound right. It didn't smell right, and it didn't look right.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, my last question. Mr. Chairman. No.
Classification, what you are saying? Could you talk if you say go ahead, go ahead. Go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, in all these agreements, government sought parliamentary approval, and the Finance Committee in Parliament, together with the Energy Committee in Parliament, did a detailed work and then scrutinized these agreements. Why will you conclude that, in spite of Parliament looking at all these agreements, you can describe the president as corrupt, even though
Honorable member, please reframe the question. I don't know that he has said that the president is corrupt here.
No, he said the president.
I said Mahama puts corruption first.
Yes, that doesn't make him corrupt.
That is what you said. That's what you said. I referred to it in the press conference he made. Yes. No.
As for the insult, it's not important. Which insult?
Which insult?
Which one? He says the president prioritized corruption, and he did.
Honorable nominee, my point is that in all these agreements, it had parliamentary approval. So you can criticize it, but for you to, in spite of the fact that it had parliamentary approval, you went on to describe the president as President Mahama puts corruption first.
There's no.
How do you reconcile the fact that all these agreements had parliamentary approval before they were enrolled out?
Mr. Chairman, with the greatest of respects, the fact that it went through Parliament doesn't mean it is kosher. That means everything is right with it. Mr. Chairman, we also know that those agreements came to Parliament and you literally had 48 hours to go through and approve. Mr. President, may I suggest that it is...
Mr. Speaker, or Chairman.
Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I have had the good fortune of going through those contracts. And these are onerous contracts that I dare say cannot be fully examined, both for their financial implications and the implication on our generation capacities in 24 to 48 hours. So Parliament would do its very best. But as it does its very best, time constraints will not allow it to do it thoroughly. That is why I believe that it is important to periodically look at all these contracts over and over again.
Right, now we come to leadership.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
9 p.m.
Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, the nominees are engaged in conversation, Mr. Chairman. He's not listening to you. Mr. Chairman, I want to ask the nominee, what is he bringing to the Ministry of Energy? But when I check his CV, he's more into financing. And the last time he had any job to do, apart from politicking, was about 9 years ago. So what is he bringing to the Ministry of Energy?
Mr. Chairman, let me assure the honorable gentleman that I bring a lot to the table. In my years in the bank, I have done a lot of lending to the industry. And in order to be in a good position to understand your exposures and credit requirements, you ought to understand the industry you are lending to. The second thing is that since 2008, I have largely worked on the party's programs for energy. And on all three occasions that there have been a presidential the people in KNUST, they have a president's forum on energy. I have been the one on whom the task has fallen to address the body. Finally, and I think more importantly, Mr. Chairman, the problems of the energy sector are purely financial. How you manage the resource flows in the industry, how you structure the payments, how you structure their credits, how you structure their borrowing, are the key ingredients to the success of that industry. If you look at a simple example as ECG, you ask yourself, why are they using short-term suppliers credit to finance activities of 5 years or more? Bad financial decisions. So I bring to the table the ability to impact on the financial decision-making in the energy sector.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I want to ask the nominee, in his earlier answer to a question, he said that what this country needed was only one FSRU, and we went for 3. Where did he get this information? Or where did he get this advice from?
Mr. Chairman, it is a report that resides in the Ministry of Energy. And since I was made Minister-Designate, I have had the opportunity to have access to the report and read it.
That report is by who? Who wrote it?
It was done by a committee of probably 17 people drawn from the various institutions.
I'm happy you said that because the past 9 years or so, you've spent time in trying to help your party design the energy policy and information. You will know that in this country, there's only one institution that advises government on energy issues, and that is the Energy Commission. Is that report coming from Energy Commission?
Mr. Chairman, the Energy Commission is the primary body. The Energy Commission at all times invites expertise from the various institutions, including the Attorney Generals, because it has financial implications as to what decisions you take. The Energy Commission by itself will not sit down and make these decisions. They convene a forum that then goes through all the issues and implications, legal, financial, technical, and all of that, and puts the report together.
That's why I asked you, was this report from Energy Commission?
It is under the chairmanship of the Energy Commission.
Are you stating it for a fact? Or you are, because you earlier said that this is something at the Ministry of Energy or Power, and it is done by about 17 people. Now you are saying that it's under the leadership of the Energy Commission, which is which?
Mr. Chairman, I hope I will repeat, and I hope he can follow. Maybe I didn't express myself too clearly. All I'm saying is that a committee was put together, made of about 17 people with a lot of institutional representation, under the leadership of the Energy Commission, to write a report which says that we need one FSRU. Now we have 3. What are the consequences and implications of cancelling the contracts of the two others.
Please, Mr. Chairman, I think that in the answer to a question asked, if I heard you, and I will insist, if I contradict you, the tape is played for us to hear. You said that this country needed only one, but the former regime went ahead to procure 3. It is after procuring 3, and then when the World Bank was breathing on the president's neck, that was when this 17 committee was set up. That was what you said. So I asked, who then said, before we had the 3, that we needed only 1? That was the question that I'm asking.
Mr. Chairman, the issue of having one FSRU was determined out of the Energy Ministry because there was an issue of stranded gas in the Western Enclave. Western Enclave produces more gas than it can presently use. It means that we have to ship the excess gas all the way to the Eastern Enclave where there's a deficit. There are logistical and infrastructural problems currently. So the decision was made to bring in a regasification unit to fill the gap, whilst the tie-in and the reverse west-east flow was being engineered. That was a decision that was arrived at. And hence, Ghana GNPC, as the national gas aggregator, went into action and partnered Quantum to put that in place. We have now moved from where everybody was of the opinion that only one regasification unit was in play. Now we have 3 that have all had signatures on them. Now, suffice it to say that on the 21st...
Mr. Chairman, with the greatest respect, I mean, rationally, I should not be interjecting, but the question I asked is simple. As to why they bought 3, why they should have bought only 1, I said, you said that the advice was that only 1 is needed.
Yes.
And then we went in for 3. And I asked, who advised that we should buy only 1?
A committee under the chairmanship of Energy Commission, which is the sole advisor to government.
No, but that, you see, please. I asked you, you came back again and said that it is when they had 3 that this committee was set up.
No, please. The question of procuring an FSRU to fill in the gap also had a technical committee deciding that. All in the same format. Energy Commission, interested party, Attorney General, all come on board.
So who set up the committee?
The Minister for Energy.
The Minister for Energy?
Yes.
I hope there are terms of reference, and the report is also available.
I have seen the report.
Mr. Chairman, I am officially making a request for the terms of reference and a copy of this report, but let me move on. Earlier, the nominee made allusion that when now the former administration had bought 3, and the World Bank was breathing on the president's neck. Mr. Chairman, with the greatest respect to the nominee, I want the evidence that the World Bank was breathing on the neck of the president. Because just as we were not allowing members to make unsubstantiated allegations, I don't think it would be fair for the nominee to also come here to make unsubstantiated allegations about somebody breathing on another person's neck and get away with it. So we will want the evidence, or otherwise, Mr. Chairman, with the greater respect to a nominee, he will have to withdraw this, because if he cannot substantiate it, he doesn't make it, because that is the rules of this this House.
Mr. Chairman,
your complaint is that breathing on the president's neck, is it a statement of fact or expression of so, Mr. Ajaku, are you saying as a fact that the World Bank, I don't know when you say the World Bank what you mean, whether the body or individuals in the World Bank were standing by the president and breathing on his neck, or what did you mean, please?
Well, Mr. Chairman, maybe before he answers, I believe that we all understand why it means that World Bank brought pressure to bear on the president. Right. And I said that we will need this evidence, because at what time did the World Bank tell him that they had to put pressure on the president to set up that committee?
Mr. Chairman, permit me to read a document, Gas to Power Value Chain Actions for the Ghanaian Energy Sector.
Which document is that?
It's a cabinet memorandum.
And after that, you'll be willing to tender it, leave a copy with us?
Yes. 21st November 2016. On November 13th, 2016, this is a memorandum submitted jointly by Honorable Sir Tekpe and Emmanuel Amakofiboa. On November 13th, 2016, His Excellency John Dramani Mahama and the Minister of Finance / Power, Honorable Seth E. Tekpe, met with the World Bank team led by Henry G. Carelli, Country Director in Accra, Ghana, to discuss urgent issues in the energy sector. In attendance was the Government of Ghana Energy Sector Working Group. The discussions were preceded by a joint presentation by the Energy Sector Working Group and the World Bank outlining the issues. The objectives of the aid memoir was to record the issues discussed and agree on the next steps to resolve them.
Honourable Member, hold on. Let's do a small caucus meeting with the leadership and.
Please, Mr. Chairman, please, Mr. Chairman, I'm not putting it on. Mr. Chairman, with a greater respect, we don't want any secrecy. Let him go ahead and read it. Let him go ahead and read it. It's cabinet memo. We all want to hear the content of that memo, where the World Bank was sitting on the neck of the president. Let him continue to read. We don't want to discuss anything behind the camera. Let him continue reading. We are Mr. Chairman, with a greater respect, let him continue reading. Yeah. Please, if there are secrecy in there, it is for him how he got it, but let him continue reading, because these are his documents and these are his evidence. Let him continue reading.
Okay.
Let him read.
Let me put on record that Honorable Araiga has raised the issue that a cabinet memo which may be labeled secret, whether it should be read on public, and I wanted a discussion on that to draw a conclusion. So it do not appear that anybody was doing a kululu, but the decision is that those who ask the question, they want to. Please proceed.
Mr. Chairman, this is a bulky document, and I can leave it with you. Also, the Gas Master Plan 2014.
Mr. Chairman, the greatest respect. The matter, please. The matter under consideration was he was fishing out a section that states that the World Bank put pressure on the president. But he's reading a very long, and now he said that it's a bulky. He should just make reference to the paragraph where the World Bank was putting pressure on the former president to form this committee. That's all we're asking for.
Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, page 7 of 8, they give 5 summary agreed next steps. And the key one, re-evaluate alternate fuel supply options to inform the decision. And this is in reference to the FSRU that had been recommended in the Gas Master Plan of 2014. The Gas Master Plan is specific that you need one FSRU.
Mr. Chairman, the sad thing is that you make an allegation, and I'm insisting that if he cannot make reference to the section where the World Bank put pressure on the former president, he should withdraw it. And that's the most honorable thing to do so that we can proceed. Because, I mean, I have well over 50 more questions to ask. If it's going to delay, I'm sure we'll be here till tomorrow morning. Yes. So if he cannot make reference to a relevant paragraph about the World Bank putting pressure on the former president, he simply withdraws. That's the rules of this House, and then we'll be able to make progress.
Honorable nominee, please proceed.
Mr. Chairman, the power projects under construction committed and advanced are expected to result in excess supply capacity for each of the years 2017 to 2021, reaching a maximum excess estimated to be 1,700 megawatts in 2020. The capacity charges in respect of this excess capacity alone will total $680 million annually and will continue to contribute to the further deterioration of the energy sector's financial condition, as well as increase the country's fiscal risk. To avoid or mitigate the expected excess and associated costs, the following actions are to be taken. 1, development of all conventional power projects will be suspended through a formal cabinet decision that will reaffirm the earlier verbal directive for a moratorium from government. 2, legal and financial reviews of PPAs and MOUs of committed and advanced projects will be conducted to decide upon which projects will be delayed, deferred, or spread. 3, additional work will also be done to rationalize VALCO's demand of export of electricity.
Chairman, he should refer to the paragraph that deals with the World Bank. Chairman, recall that when the Honorable Soyene got the floor and made comments that largely rested heavily on the bank and not the nominee, you exercised discretion right, stopped him, went further to deny him the opportunity to go ahead. The nominee in his earliest answers sought to insinuate that the president is corrupt because he has procured 3 FSRUs. Can you submit to this committee and to Parliament signed contracts of all these FSRUs and any financial commitment made pursuant to those contracts? We find your comments, your insinuations unacceptable, an attempt to denigrate the former president, and you must provide further evidence that independent audits have been conducted on the value for money for these projects before you could have come to these conclusions. But we want, for the record, I'm aware that Sahara came to Parliament, I'm aware that no contract was signed. We want you to produce before this committee evidence of 3 FSRU's contract signed, financial commitment made by the state and by extension the person you referred to, Enders, to assist the work of this committee. Thank you, Chairman. If you may continue.
Yes. Hello. I take this as a point of order.
For you to make a ruling.
That's That's right. It's an application made to me to rule. First, application is premised on the assumption that the member has said here that the president was corrupt. That matter has been determined. That Mr. Honorable Samson, his question was that he made a press conference elsewhere, not here. Earlier on, I asked.
He accepted.
Yes. But this committee would not make rulings based on press conferences made elsewhere.
He has accepted that that was a fact. He accepted it. If he had rejected it and denied it, that would have been different. Mr. Chairman.
Hello. I don't think you should be interrupting. When you're talking, I allowed you to talk. So please.
And he's the first deputy speaker.
Oh, we don't need that reminder. I think
we don't need that reminder.
Hello. Order. Now, that application, the basis of that application is not there, because no such allegation has been made before this committee. Earlier on, when I was distracted, and I thought, in fact, it had been made here, I sought from Honorable Ahi for a confirmation whether indeed he had made that allegation at this committee. Then Honorable Ahi confirmed that he was referring to a press conference he has made elsewhere. And you asked him, so before this House, the nominee has not made any allegation at this committee. He has not made any allegation which will require that I make a ruling. What he has agreed to do was that the document, I asked him to produce the source. He mentioned the source, and he has agreed to tender the document. That certainly I'll do. I'll take the document here. Now, the issue, the question you asked was for him to show that the World Bank was putting pressure on the president. He's answering. I thought there was an issue raised by Honorable Ayaga, which we should discuss here. You disagreed. So I asked him to continue. As for his answers, how you evaluate his answers is up to you. But the answer he's offering, he's entitled to offer them. Please.
And then 66 in patrol for them. The speaker should have the sole judge.
Don't worry. My ruling is that you should continue. If you're satisfied with the answer or not, you may make, as for leadership, there is no limit to questions you can ask.
Yes, please. Well, Mr. Chairman, all what he has read, with the greater respect to the chair, he did not mention the World Bank. He has not been able to show where the World Bank has written. And Mr. Chairman, with the greater respect, even if it is not here, we will give him time to produce that document where the World Bank wrote, putting pressure on the former president. But let me proceed. Mr. Chairman.
Order. Please proceed with your question. You have raised this issue. Proceed with your question.
The nominee, in answering to earlier question, said that the losses incurred by ECD, both technical and what have you, commercial, is 30%. Is that what you said? I want to know. I want to know where he get this fact. Whether he's saying that it's 30%.
Mr. Chair, since I was designated to the ministry, I've met with all the agencies, all the 16 agencies under the ministry, to do an assessment with them. And these are the figures that ECG themselves have provided to me.
Mr. Chairman, I've served as a member of the Mines and Energy Committee for the past 8 years. And the last quarter, did show him that their losses are 30%, but I'll proceed. Mr. Chairman, he again said that the ECG owes, government owes ECG in the range of 800 million Ghana cedis. Is that right? In an earlier answer to your question?
Yes, indeed.
How much does ECG ECG also owe government? Because you know that through arrangements where government tries to finance the activities of VRA and other energy sector players, they are supposed to always do reconciliation. Have you checked that ECG also owes government, and how much is that?
Mr. Chairman, from my understanding of from an accounting standpoint, as I understand it, ECG is entirely owned by government. So the matter of ECG owing government becomes a little technically a quirk. We must also note that in the past, there was a netting arrangement in place where the actors sat around the table and arranged or worked out the due to and due from. The clearing system, due to, due from, to net out positions. That process has stopped. And therefore, all the numbers we are getting is in gross arrangements. So the netting could have told us where the netting process could have told us who owns who to what and who is due from to who. In the absence of the netting system, it becomes difficult to say ECG owes government this amount of money.
Well, I mean, do you intend taking an audit of who owes what, who, within the energy sector before you go out pronouncing who owes what? Because if you've not finished and you just heard one, and then you run with it and you are talking like you are telling us 800 million, we've not taken your time to talk to the finance and also get to know how much ECD owes them. And like you rightly said, there's always this netting. When that has not been done, and we just say, because we've heard ECG say their side, without hearing the other side, I think that'll be. So I just want to ask, will you take an audit of the energy sector to be able to tell all the people of this country how much everybody owes the other?
Mr. Chairman, part of the exercise of meeting the 16 agencies was to assess individually their financial positions. After that, yes, there is a need to do a reconciliation and an audit, first to get the exact amount of money owed in the energy sector. As we speak, I can tell you that it's a little fluid. We are not getting firm numbers from some of the organizations. So we intend to audit, apart from their audited statement, we intend to do this reconciliation to understand the exact extent of indebtedness. Because if we are to go the route of structured finance, we must be exact in the numbers we give to the market or to whoever is doing the private placement.
So you agree with me that it will be safer to hold on throwing out with numbers when this auditing has not been done? Do you agree with me?
Mr. Chairman, I will go by what the agency themselves have submitted. The agencies themselves, for example, VRA has submitted their numbers. ECG has submitted their numbers, and so on and so forth. I think I will be remiss if I say that because I haven't audited them myself, I cannot use these numbers in discussions, in planning, in structuring. I think I'll be remiss in my duties.
Well, I won't belabor it, but you rightly said you've talked to your agencies, but they also owe Minister of Finance. You've not spoken to Minister of Finance. That's what I'm just drawing at, because then if you're not careful, you only be running with your agency's numbers, when in actual sense you don't know the numbers at the other side.
Mr. Chairman, I have engaged the Minister of Finance designate, and we are thinking together in this process.
Okay. You earlier in a question to you about VRA and its activities. You said that at the airport residential area, VRA is putting up residential apartments. Did I hear that?
No, I said that they are developing property on Patrice Lumumba Road.
Okay. What kind of property is it?
It's an office building for rental.
In your talking to VRA as an agency and the ministry, if approved, that you will go in, what did they tell you what it was about?
Well, they had the land. VRA owns a lot of lands around Accra and Ghana. And they felt that this was a way to make some money, bring some money into the coffers of VRA.
And were they building, or what arrangement were they using?
My understanding is that they don't have the money to build, so another company is pre-financing. But my concern was not even the financial arrangement. My concern was the departing from the core business of VRA.
Let me understand this. You rightly said that they have a lot of land around, and they decide that, look, in order not for anybody to encroach, come and build, operate, and transfer back to us. Can you then say that that agency is going into a non-core operations? Because they are not putting any officer there, they are not putting a person there, they are not supervising anything. They've just had an agreement. This is our land, build, operate, and return it to us. Will it be fair to VRA to say that they were investing into a non-core activity?
Mr. Chairman, I go back to the act setting up VRA. VRA was given those lands for specific purposes. And if they are not going to use those lands for the intended purposes, it goes back to the alloidal owners so that no harm done.
So do you know what this specific land, what was it given to VRA for?
If you know the area very well, it used to be a residence, a bungalow for VRA staff. One bungalow for VRA staff, situated on a large piece of land. It's been torn down and it's been given to VRA Properties to develop an office building.
Did I hear you say that it's given to a private company?
No, it's a property company of VRA.
That's the point I want, that there's a property company
under VRA. There is a wing or a subsidiary of VRA developing properties around.
Well, Mr. Chairman, let me find out from the nominee. When did you get your letter appointing you by His Excellency the President as his representative at the Ministry of Energy?
Where's the letter? Mr. Chairman, I thought I had the letter here.
No, if you can't even, but if you can get maybe between this period.
About 2-3 weeks ago, 2 weeks or 3 weeks.
So maybe around 9th.
10th, around the 10th, I think. 10th, Monday to 10th.
Have you been operating from that office?
Yes, I go there.
You sit in the minister's office?
Sometimes I don't.
And you write letters and sign them?
Under the instructions of the president.
Do you think the act of just becoming a rep of the president, and then the reps go to the office and begin to behave like the substantive ministers, make the process of vetting like a rubber stamp?
Mr. Chairman, if the honourable member could be more specific as to what letter he deems I have signed or signed in error.
I'm not saying you've signed a letter in error. I'm only asking that you were operating from the office like a vetted minister, vetted and approved and sworn in minister when you are a rep.
Mr. Chairman, I have not held myself anywhere as a substantive minister.
Okay, because that's fine. That's fine. Do you remember that before the swearing in of His Excellency President Nana Akufo-Addo, you called the warehouse and instructed them not to let any street light leave the store? Do you remember that?
Mr. Chairman, I got a call of items being taken out of the warehouse. I called Honorable Jinapo twice, he didn't pick. As Minister-Designate, representing the President, I called Honorable Jinapo twice, I didn't get him. I called Honorable Amabua, I couldn't get him. And I used another person to get to Honorable Jinapo, who was I think in the north then. I did not instruct anybody not to take anything out of the warehouse. All I needed to do was I had received information and I needed to ascertain the facts. If anything, if I were to give instructions, I would have gone to the chief directors to ask them to stop it, or I would have gone to the outgoing ministers. I never gave instructions.
When was this?
11th, 12th, thereabouts.
That's at 11, 12 December.
No, January.
Please, Mr. Nominee, with the greater respect, let me remind you, you're under oath. Are you saying that it happened in January or in December?
I think, to the best of my recollection, it was in January.
You are sure this was in January?
To the best of my recollection.
Okay. Since it's in January, that's fine. I will just move on. Mr. Chairman, in an earlier Mr. Chairman.
Order.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, in an earlier answer to a question, the nominee alluded to the fact that the ECG indebtedness is ranging in the six of $66 million a month. Did I hear that?
No. What I said was that government's indebtedness keeps on accruing with ECG at the rate of 66 million cedis a month.
Oh, 66 million cedis a month.
Sorry,
I got it wrong. I thought I heard dollars. What happened? Mr. Chairman, I hope you remind people who have accompanied the nominee that we're expected to have only 10 people here. And if they are going to distract our process, obviously we insist that only 10 people will be left here because we invited only 10 people. Mr. Chairman, you know the previous administration had instructed ECG to put prepaid meters on MMDCE. Where is this 66 million cedis monthly coming from?
Mr. Chairman, the breakdown we have the military installations, police installations, schools, government hospitals, and all such. It's not just MMDs, but all government facilities, which most of them are not metered or don't pay rent, don't pay their bills.
Okay, so Mr. Chairman, what do you intend to do about this, to reverse this?
Mr. Chairman, if you recall, I said that one of the permanent solutions was to put all government facilities on distributed solar power so that you take them off the national grid and also incur no further debts.
you have a rough estimation how much this is likely to cost government?
I will have to, Mr. Chairman, I'll have to get into that office and have the proper studies conducted. This is not a matter of rushing through a solution, but rather carefully thinking through a solution and making sure that it becomes a permanent, workable solution.
Mr. Chairman, in an earlier question, the nominee said that 40 to 45% of the current plants are idling. Is that right? Is that what you said earlier?
Thereabouts.
Which of the plants are currently idling?
Mr. Chairman, if you give me a minute. Mr. Chairman, as of January 21st, 2017, generating facilities currently unavailable. The Mine Reserve Power Unit 1, Siemens unit numbers 1, 2, 3, and 6, Pong Generating Station Unit 1, TAPCO Unit 2, Bui Generation Station Unit number 1, BOM GS Unit number 2, MRP number 2, MRP number 3, Siemens Unit number 5, TAPCO number 1, Siemens Unit number 4, TICO Unit number 6, and all the five units of T3 are all not operating.
All these combined, how many megawatts?
378.5 megawatts.
378.5
megawatts.
What is our total generation capacity today?
Total
installed capacity.
Off-peak we have 1,744 and 2,000, and peak is 2,046.
So what is our install capacity?
3.8. Install capacity is 2,800 megawatts.
Come again, install capacity?
2,800 megawatts.
With a greater respect, so 2,800, does 378.5 constitute 40 to 45%?
Mr. Chairman, it is not your installed capacity that you are working with. It is your operating capacity.
Oh, fair enough. You said peak period is...
Peak period is 2,046.
And off-peak period?
Off-peak period is 1,740.
So let me use off-peak period. 378.5 out of 1,700, is that 40 to 45%?
Mr. Chairman, in this business, you don't do static calculations. You don't do static calculations because the engineers at GRICO and the others are switching in and out of generation units. And it is upon that a logarithm that you calculate what is down and what is operating.
So I thought you were going to administer or can move forward, but since you have decided to say that they switch, show me how this 378.5 could constitute 40 to 45.
378 is permanently down. It's not, the word may not be permanently, but unavailable.
But that's why I repeated what you said, and you confirmed that that's what you said. You said 40 to 45% are idling. Idling means they are not available. Now I ask you, and I decided to use the lowest, which is the off-peak, 1,700. And I ask you, how the 378.5 out of 1,700 cannot constitute 40 to 45%. You said that you switch some on and the way the engineers do it. I said, okay, show us how 378.5 could constitute 40 to 45%.
Mr. Chairman, it's because the honorable member is still stuck with a static calculation.
So I'm saying that. So now tell us.
At any given time, the engineers will add on to the ins and outs this 378. And so they give you a rough estimate of what has machine downtime or idle. So it is not that you have 1 + 1 = 2 and you stick to it ad infinitum. But what happens is that because they are switching generation units back and forth, there are times, for instance, off-peak, all of Bui is down. When it's off-peak, all of Bui is down, all 3 units. At any given point, that will be part of their calculation. Since I'm not an engineer, I will not be able to give you the methodology or the calculation. All I do is to take what the engineers and the experts give me as a basis for my policy decision making.
So can I ask, which of your engineers gave you this? Because you see, the fact of the matter is that for those who are doing all, this is a fact-finding committee. So you cannot just say anything and expect to go. He's saying that engineers. So which of the engineers gave you this information? Because we need to be able to cross-check those informations.
Mr. Chairman, as I said, I have met the various heads and continue to dialogue with them. On very periodic basis, they send me a GridCo report on what is in and what is out.
Well, okay. Mr. Chairman, I mean, it's okay. Let's just make progress. You recognize that in the generation sector that will be under the Minister of Energy if you are approved. About 80% of the cost, are dollarized. I mean, because of the kind of inputs they use, the non-salary. If you take the non-salary activities, the actual things that they use in terms of their inputs, their surplus are dollarized, 80%. Do you agree with me?
I don't have the figures, so I can't say yes or no.
No, but you agree that majority...
Honorable, how many more questions do you have before we go? I have 2 more.
Now, but you agree with me that the chunk of their operation depend heavily on dollar. Even though you may not be able to put your finger on the 80% that I'm proposing, but you agree that majority, the chunk of their operations rely on the foreign currency.
It could be.
How will you be able to reduce, as promised in your manifesto, to reduce tariffs heavily with this in mind?
Mr. Chairman, even though it may be dollarized, there is an equivalency in cities that we work with. In fact, it is the same situation where majority of payers pay in cedis. If that were the argument of establishing an equilibrium, then we would say that people should pay in dollars. However, the pricing structure, as we have seen it, makes room for us to make adjustments. And it is those adjustments that we have made that we are submitting to the president, and once he gives his say-so or his clearance, we'll bring to members the August House to consider to remove those levies and taxes.
Mr. Chairman, lastly, what memo will you be sending to Cabinet with regards to the bulk distributors, the bulk oil companies, with regards to their exchange losses? Because you don't control the exchange rate. What kind of memo will you be sending to Cabinet to protect
Mr. Chairman, for the information of honourable member, the arrangements where BDCs came in with FX losses no longer pertains. It's been stopped. It was Honourable Minister Setepe came to an arrangement and stopped it, and now we have the arrears. That's why it's become a legacy debt, not an ongoing arrangement.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Honorable Vice Chair.
Honorable nominee, congratulations on your nominations again.
Thank you.
I have one question, and it relates to generation of energy through waste. And I want to have your take on it, and if it's the way to go, what will be the steps that you will take, considering the fact that we have waste everywhere in Ghana. Other countries have resorted to using these waste to generate energy for other purposes. So what would be your take on it? And if it's the way to go, what will be your steps that you take if you're finally approved by the House? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Waste to energy is a significant component of renewables. We generate so much waste we don't know what to do with. It also relieves us of the problem of landfills and contamination of water bodies and aquifers and so on and so forth. So it's important that we focus on it. There are evolving technologies, and we have, since I have been designated, I have received about 6 proposals that I'm looking at in order to be able to understand the technologies, the pricing, the collection and disposals. So we will work on it and make sure that it becomes an integral part of our renewable energy mix.
Ranking member.
Thank you very much, Chairman. But, Chairman, I would wish to proceed on the basis that you give clarity to your ruling of my earlier request. I maintain that I heard the nominee state emphatically and in quotes that government acquired 3 FSRUs and not 1. And he referenced further that some of these procurement processes, there was resort to sole sourcing. In order that I satisfy myself end the work of this committee, we would want to see concluded contracts on these 3 FSRUs and the attending financial consequence thereon. If you rule on it, that will enable me proceed further with my contributions by way of comment.
Ruling has earlier been given that the nominee first would identify the document he was reading from and agree to tender it. So probably what you should do now is, now that it's finished working, please tender the document so it will be here. When the matter relating to procurement, it was fuel for one of the car power, that at the time they were doing the procurement, there was a certain figure, and then it was stopped, and sole sourcing took it to a certain figure. If I recall, the sole sourcing was in reference to fuel. Is that right? Yes.
Chairman, my request is a simple one. 3 FSRUs, not one, were his words. Can he tender contracts with respective approved financial commitment by the state, including disbursement if he has any, as part of the record of this committee? So that's my first question.
Mr. Chairman, I can submit the reports of the various committees that worked on this matter, where these reports are to serve as guide for me. I am not presently in a position to say that I am going beneath the various committees that have worked on this matter to look at the contracts. But I take it that if a competent committee is set up by the ministry and they come up with recommendations, I am bound to take it seriously and work with it. So I can give you...
Hold it there. What is your source of information?
It is the ministry's own report.
And you're willing to submit a copy of that report to the House?
Yes, I can bring it.
That's all.
And the report contains 3 FSRUs acquired.
The report contains our commitments to 3 FSRUs and the cost associated with them and the cost for abrogating some 2 of those units.
Chairman, just to note for purpose of your work, at some point we will request a full review of the earlier audio submissions of the nominee to facilitate our work. May I now respectfully request the nominee installed capacity, including repairs and retrofitting, is it 2,800 as you indicated to this committee?
Mr. Chairman, that's the number I know.
So, assuming we're able to establish that Ghana's installed capacity generation is 3,800 megawatts and not 2,800.
If there is evidence to the contrary, why not?
But we take it as a record that your submission to this committee was 2,800, emphatic.
About fair enough.
Chairman, he referred to debt within the energy sector, and he referred to some 3.3 billion. And in that submission, he further referred to some 157 million owed BDC. Will he provide a breakdown of what constitutes this 3.3 billion and who is owed what under this amount?
Mr. Chairman, We are in the process of doing the aggregation. 3.3 is the rough estimate we've come up so far. For example, what was submitted to me by VRA was over $1 billion. ECG also close to $1 billion. We haven't looked at BOST. We haven't had the firm numbers for BOST, TOR, and all the other agencies. We want to be able to get our hands on the exact firm figures. But for the purposes of discussing these matters with the Minister of Finance designate, we have to do back of the envelope calculations in order to understand the direction in which this huge debts are moving.
Are you aware that between October and December, part of the BDC debt was serviced and in fact paid?
Yes, I am aware.
How much of it was paid?
Mr. Chairman, I can get the BDC reports and submit it to you, but what I recall is that when I met the BDCs and looked at the report, there was an outstanding of about 156 million. There was another 10 million in dispute because of reconciliation issues.
Are you aware that payments to the BDCs were made on the basis of an audit conducted and the responsibility shared between the Ministry of Finance and the Bank of Ghana in respect of the outstanding liabilities?
Yes, I've seen such a report.
And will you be fair to admit that you inherited a restructured plan to service the BDC and the entire energy sector debt using ESLA as guarantee and other receivables from all the state-owned enterprises?
Mr. Chair, in my earlier submissions, I said that yes, the VRA restructuring and the other debts have started and are proceeding. However, I was of the opinion that if you have facing a debt of $3 billion and you limit or you start restructuring 300 here, 157 here, or 400, you are not getting to the crux of the matter. And I was suggesting that we ought to look at a bolder arrangement in order to quickly bring this merry-go-round to an end.
Chairman, I'm only suggesting to the nominee that you are inheriting a restructured program of servicing the energy sector debt with only some slight modifications as submitted. Is that the case?
Mr. Chairman, there is a portion of the debt that is restructured. The first phase was about a little over 400 million cedis. The second phase is stalled, going nowhere fast. But I will come back to the point and say that if, on assuming the position of Minister of Energy, the final audit says I owe $4 billion and 500 million has been restructured, I am still out there on the limb for another 3.5 billion. My worry is not, and the suggestion I made is that this piecemeal approach, however good it is, will not resolve the matters very quickly for the sector to free itself and come back to optimum performance.
Thank you. Is it not the case that SOEs today are using their own receivables to settle their own SOE debts, and Gridco is a beneficiary of this restructuring initiative, which has been ongoing before your nomination?
Mr. Chairman, a lot of the agencies are doing same. A lot of the agencies who have not had their budget amounts, allocations released to them, are using internally generated funds, I believe, to get along. So a lot of efforts are being made. I come back to my central point that I from my banking background, I do not think that the piecemeal approach we are having now is going to be helpful, and that we need to take a different approach in order to come to grips with it.
Thank you, Honorable. That's noted. But is it not the case that the first restructuring was done with the energy sector levy? Does this government intend to revise that levy?
Mr. Chairman, we will revise the levy.
You will revise the energy sector levy?
We will revise the levies for the simple fact that we do not have this. If we rely on the present tax fiscal space to deal with this matter, we will not get very far. If we rely on the local banks who have exceeded their single line obligos in order to refi the problem we have, we will not get very far.
What kind of revision will you do with ESLA? Share with us.
Pardon me?
What revision will you do to the energy sector levy, upwards or downwards, or completely repeal it like you said?
We will start by decreasing it.
Decreasing the energy sector, a review downwards.
Yeah, review downwards. And as we finish the financial engineering of the non-recourse approach, then it may be necessary not to have it all together, or use it as part of the dedicated stream of revenues to whatever is left of it, dedicated stream of revenue to service the 10 to 15-year tenure.
Are you aware that part of the restructuring, which is ongoing, is private placement, and therefore what you seek to do is to add domestic bonds and probably that of non-residents? Is that the case?
Pardon me, I didn't hear your question well.
The restructuring, which is ongoing, is private placement, and you intend with some modification to expand it to include other investors. But the energy sector levy remains a critical guarantee as collateral for that, and that the private banks of Ghana are already benefiting from this.
Sorry if I am belaboring the point. The restructuring that is currently being done, in my estimation, in my professional estimation, is woefully inadequate. Good intention, but woefully inadequate. A private placement, that is why I use the word non-recourse financing, limited or full, so that we can get the space not on the books of records of the agencies and the sector players or the local banks. As I review the single line obligo of local banks, I am frightened that the banks mentioned herein are all on their way to receivership, and we can't allow that to happen in an economy.
May I now take you to rural electrification, where one of our colleagues earlier on indicated that Ghana today is at 72% compared to South Africa. What will be your blueprint of a roadmap? When do we expect to attain 80, 85, 90, 200% envisaged under the 4-year mandate of the administration of which you are part?
Mr. Chairman, I will not prejudge the matter. I have not assumed office. I don't see all the data. Once I see all the data, I'll be able to make a judgment.
Will you describe the energy sector levy as a nuisance tax?
I will not say so.
Are you aware that the World Bank could have given a partial risk guarantee of up to $6 billion for the 10 Sankofa field, which is likely to trigger some opportunity for you in terms of expanded access to gas?
What I know is that the World Bank gave us a partial guarantee of $400 million. The question is, to what purpose? And I'm sure I'm sure that what we have is enough.
We don't need any partial risk guarantee or any put-on-call option in terms of our financing and restructuring the energy-related debt. Is that your suggestion?
My suggestion is we go a different way.
Can you share with us this different way and your adequate measures to address the energy sector debt?
Mr. Chairman, the different way I have suggested is non-recourse financing, either through a private placement or going on the market.
And when do you intend to initiate this and with whom?
Mr. Chairman, you do not, in structured finance, you do not predetermine whom you are going to do the business with. You do your own homework, get your numbers right, and then approach different partners to see what they can do.
Thank you, Chairman. Are you aware that given the current low crude prices of $54 per barrel, natural gas will not offer any reduction in tariff, especially with 10 and Sankofa at 9.98 per MMBTU?
Mr. Chairman, the price for Sankofa under any is an indicative price. We may end up with a different price depending on the cost of the final project. When we get to that bridge, we will see what the final price is.
Are you aware that the cost to which government will sell gas to independent power producers will determine how much they sell in terms of determining their tariffs, which consequently will affect your quest to want to do a downward review of tariffs for lifeline consumers?
Mr. Chairman, I do not agree.
What will you do in terms of wanting to reduce gas prices sold to independent power producers? Maybe presently you have $2.90 per MMBTU, and you probably will want to sell at 1.90 US cents in order to be able to achieve that.
Mr. Chairman, as I indicated, we've looked at the pricing structure of our own gas in comparison to Nigerian gas, and we are confident that we can do a lot of reductions. As I said, these numbers have been forwarded to the President for his assent, and I think it will be imprudent on my part to put those numbers here until he's given me clearance.
Thank you. You indicated that part of the cost built up in terms of ECG annual costs and unpaid bills emanate from schools, barracks, ministries, and government departments. What is your plan to revise this position in order to safeguard ECG from continuing to accumulate this?
Mr. Chairman, I have said that one of the ways is to quickly migrate all these facilities onto distributed solar. If we later on have concentrated or utility scale solar, we will add them to it.
So how do you intend to end that cycle? A cycle where VRA is on standby, there are entities which owe VRA, ECG is unable to settle its indebtedness to VRA because it owes government. What will be your reform package to deal with this?
Mr. Chairman, that is why we are trying to get our hands on the total indebtedness of the sector. Having done so, we are looking at a financial engineering, as I've always described, non-recourse financing in order to dislodge the debt completely off the books of records of our banks and the sector players in order to give them free space to start operating.
Chairman, I understand that the nominee will be responsible for the petroleum sector. Would you support an open competitive auction of all oil wells belonging to the Republic?
All oil blocks or wells?
Blocks.
There is a process in place now, and the new Petroleum Law 919, I believe, adequately sets out the process in law.
Will you support an open auction of all dedicated oil wells to ensure oil blocks for more transparency and for value for money?
Mr. Chairman, I believe that 919 sets out clearly a process. I'll follow what the law asks me to do.
Will you Lonro acquired some free zones interest in the western region for further development of the gas and petrochemical industry. What will be on your position to facilitate the takeoff of that project?
Mr. Chairman, I have just received the briefing notes on Atuabo, the facility. I will study it and make a judgment when I get into office.
We want your commitment. It is something you probably will pursue or not. It's been on the drawing blocks because one of our colleagues decided to proceed to court on the matter. Will you pursue that in order to create the needed jobs and to allow for the development of the petrochemical industry?
Mr. Chairman, I would want to get there, get my hands on the matter, get technical advice, and proceed.
What will you do to separate the role and functions of the Petroleum Commission, in particular to the Ghana National GNPC, in order that our roles will not overlap in terms of representing the carried interests of the state and the Petroleum Commission playing its role in accordance with law?
Mr. Chairman, the Petroleum Commission law, I believe, does that. There has been some legacy issues where GNPC, in the absence of a Petroleum Commission, tended to act as a regulator. I believe that the new law clearly spells out their individual and specific roles, and that's what we will follow.
Chairman, I'm almost done, but I'm almost done with the nominee. But considering that the energy sector is critical to industry, critical to supporting personal lives, I'm aware that in his earlier comment, he referred to the Millennium Challenge Compact. What will you do to secure that no worker at ECG is sacrificed in his pursuit?
Mr. Chairman, these are some of the matters that the workers have raised on this matter. And as I said earlier on, there are concerns which I share. The ECG itself has asked for certain decisions concerning labor and employment, local content, terms of conditions, ECG's role in monitoring, and so on and so forth. I am of the opinion that we protect our workers in whatever arrangements we make.
Chairman, under the Millennium Challenge Compact, I heard you refer to Congress decision. There is a part of the clause which was signed by then administration to secure reforms within the energy sector. One of the major issues that the workers raised on behalf of the people of Ghana was a prohibitive clause under the Millennium Challenge Compact, which sought to oust Ghanaian law and Ghanaian constitution and subordinate it to the U.S. law. Will you pursue a revision of that?
Mr. Chairman, there can be no law higher than the laws of Ghana, and we stand by it to make it so.
Will we have your assurance that there are over 2,000 to 4,000 communities in Ghana that are yearning for connection under our rural grid. You will treat particularly rural communities as lifeline consumers.
Mr. Chairman, I believe this matter came up earlier on from Honorable Cabo. We are committed to lifting up the standards of lives in the rural areas because electricity makes a difference to their social life and it makes a difference to their economic life. So yes, we stand to make sure that rural electrification proceeds apace.
May I request of the nominee that the moratorium is on power and not gas in the restructuring of the entire energy sector. Are you aware of that?
The moratorium,
in terms of increasing those who can participate in generation, is restricted only to power and not the gas subsector.
I don't get
the cabinet memo you read, to even though it will be tendered in record, seeks to deal with this subject that I'm talking about, that the moratorium was restricted to the power sector and not the gas sector.
Yes, I read it in the memo.
What will be your expertise, like given your financial background, as to the implications of the changing generation mix on our economy in general?
We have come to a place where thermal is increasingly becoming the most dominant portion. Currently at production, hydro is 55.1%, generating 1,048 megawatts. Thermal is 729.94 megawatts, representing 38.4%. It is clear that as the generation mix changes to more thermal, the cost of production will increase. But I'm of the view that we ought to come to a place where we tell all our independent power producers that, look, guys, we can buy power at 11 cents. If you can produce it, fine. If you can't, tough. Other countries do it to great benefit. And I don't see how we can have PPAs with prices all over the place.
What will you be doing to improve transmission generally in the country?
We have a transmission system now that is quite robust, although there is some deficiencies in the western part because of load imbalance. Gridco will continue to add substations and upgrade substations. One of the things I think should be key is that as we improve our gas supplies, with any bringing 305 million scarves a day, if we are lucky with HES and Vanco adding more gas, we ought to be able to move gas into the middle of the country and have generation there so that we will reduce transmission distances and therefore transmission losses.
Mr. Chairman, may I know from the nominee what plans you have to deepen openness and transparency in the operations of the GNPC?
Mr. Chairman, GNPC as the custodian of our national assets must subscribe to the best international practices on tendering and procurement. And if we etch those in stones, we will improve their operations.
Very, very recently, the government had to rely on GNPC to provide some critical guarantees. Do you share that as a financial aspect, that was worthy to do by the previous administration?
Mr. Chairman, that arrangement was incidental. And as a banker, I don't subscribe to incidental ad hoc arrangements. In most of the countries with hydrocarbon resources, the assets are lodged not on the national books, but in corporate entities. That is why they use Belarus, Kazakhstan, and all of them, Iran. That is how come they are able to use the corporate assets to leverage higher levels of investments into the country. In our case, because the assets, the value of the assets are lodged on our national accounts, it denies us the opportunity for such leveraging. But I would want a situation where we have institutional arrangements where some of these assets are used to enhance the balance sheet of the weaker ones in the sector.
But is that not the case for Gridco Airport Company, Ghana Ports and Harbours Authority, today now borrowing on the strength of their balance sheet, based on their own receivables? Companies
must borrow on their balance sheet. Yes, I agree. But where one company stands as guarantor or parent to enhance the credit worthiness of another company on ad hoc basis without proper arrangements and guarantees always open room for risk.
Per the requirements of Article 94, have you taken steps to commit to doing and submitting to us your tax obligations?
I have them. The information that is before us.
Do you owe allegiance to any other state other than the Republic of Ghana? And when was your last visit to the United States of America?
If I may repeat, none whatsoever. I left United States in June 2007 and have never been back.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I heard you want to come and continue. Okay, I have no questions for you. We thank you for attending upon the committee. You're discharged. You're collect from... No clapping, please. Can we collect the...
I'll decide on which one to make the break. Right.